Go ahead and bring your hands to your front ribs. We're going to isolate our pelvis and just the lowest part of the spine. Picture a marble at the front of your pelvis, right at that pubic bone, as it rolls forward toward the feet. That's an anterior tip as we lift the low back up. And then roll that marble back towards your belly button like you're scooping the tailbone under. So keep rocking back and forth between that anterior and posterior tilt. Kind of like just the low back is doing a really little cat-cow. So we're going to think segmentally today and just try to move one part at a time. We'll hold that neutral where the sacrum is down and lift up just a few inches. It's going to be so small, using the glutes into low bridge, keeping the hands on the front ribs. And now you're going to stay in this position with the hips and just lower down maybe 1 or 2 vertebrae. And then lift back up. So we're kind of right around the mid back, right around that bra line area, just trying to lower maybe 1 or 2 vertebrae and then lift. So we're just kind of coming from a low bridge, lowering down even more, and then lifting back up. So we're waking up the glutes, but we're also mobilizing this mid back, finding some sticky spots. And then stay in your low bridge, reach either hand up at a time, pull back on the wrist, and then slowly lower down 1 vertebra at a time. If you have a block, it's going to come behind the head today, and we'll have the hands behind the head just like we normally would with the elbows in. You don't have to use the block though. This is just going to be a little enhancement. Take a big breath and feel the rib cage expand as you hold triple S. Exhale, keep the sacrum down. Lean your head back into the block as you try to lift off the shoulder blades. So those front ribs pull in toward the body to get you up. We keep the elbows in as much as possible. Inhale and lower down. Big breath in. Exhale when you're ready, keeping the sacrum down. Feel the front ribs pull in toward the body as you lift up. Keep leaning your skull back into the block so we're not yanking on the head or neck. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lean your head back into the block as you lift up. Back of the neck is long, sacrum stays down. We're going to do our very best to turn the center of the chest just 1 inch to the right without leading with your head or your eyes. So keep leaning the head back. We're turning from the thoracic spine. We bring it back to center. Inhale and lower. So we're thinking segmentally. Exhale, keep the sacrum down. Lean the head back into this block. Lift up. Just the ribs. So we're turning the ribs maybe 1 inch to the left, leaning the head back into the block. Bring it back to center. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift, leaning the head back into the block, keeping the sacrum down. Turn 1 inch to the right, staying off that right shoulder blade, leaning the head back into the block. Maybe we challenge the pelvis by extending the right leg a little straighter. Don't rock onto that left butt cheek though. Bring it back to center, foot comes down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lean your head back into the block as you lift up. Back of the neck is long. We turn from the center of the chest 1 inch to the left, staying off the left shoulder blade. Maybe extend that left leg a little straighter, keeping the sacrum the same. Come back to center, lower the foot. Inhale and lower. Move the block aside. We're going to hug the knees in and start with just a little rock side to side. So what we were just trying to avoid, we're going to do on purpose now. Rocking the pelvis side to side, but trying to keep the shoulder blades and the back ribs down. So now we're isolating that lumbar spine, the low back. Just a gentle little rotation there through the lumbar spine. And now let's just do a little rock up and down, any amount that feels good or tolerable for your back. And when you're ready, we'll come to quadruped. We are going to be here for a little longer, so if you want to come to fists, that's absolutely an option. We're going to do a segmental or a wavy cat-cow, starting at your lumbar spine, so the pelvis. You're gonna tip the pelvis forward, arching the low back, and then let the ribs and belly kind of droop down as we lift the chin. And then we reverse. We lower the chin, spread the shoulder blades apart, round the upper back, the mid back, and then try to tuck that tailbone under into that full cat. And then we do it again. We arch the low back, we tip the pelvis. We start lowering the ribs and arching the mid back into extension. And then we lift the chin any amount and wave it the other way. So now we round the back slowly. And you're gonna keep trying to cat-cow. You might have to go really slow to think about it. That's fine. Take your time and see if you can think segmentally. Can we move kind of one portion of the spine at a time? If that feels quite natural to you, then think about taking that segmental further. Can you move one vertebra and really wave and articulate the spine from flexion into extension? And then find your neutral. Coming onto the hands for down dog. Tuck the toes, press into the fingers. Now we're going to do this segmentally. From your neutral, hover the knees. That's the first part. Then I want you to think about your thigh bones lifting up. Now pike the pelvis up more. Keep feeling the hip creases lift up, 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 pressing into the fingers, lifting the ribs up toward the body. And now that we're in this really shortened, piked down dog, do whatever feels good. You can, of course, pedal the feet. You can swivel. You can shrug the shoulders, getting that glide of the scapula up and down the ribs. Keep a huge bend in the knees and think about the spine staying really long, like a broom is taped behind you. And we're going to walk the hands back with that feeling of the pelvis piking up, even when we land the heels and the toes into that triple flexion. You can let the head release and do a little swivel or figure eight or nod yes and no of the head. Just kind of releasing the head, the cervical spine. We're going to grab our block for a little extra stability and engagement. It can come between the knees. It can come all the way up between the inner thighs. Wherever you would like, just a little gentle hug around the pelvis. And we're gonna big bend in the knees, use the legs and the glutes, but we're gonna roll up a little bit today. So keep that gentle hug, and just as much as it feels good, roll up with control, with intention. So we're still using the core, we're using the legs, and we are having that gentle hug as we come all the way up. Take the block out, and now it's gonna come behind the head. And we're going to use it the same way we did in our core work. You can have elbows in as tight as you need to not pop the ribs. And we feel the skull push back into the block, not that the chin lifts up. Now pick up your right foot. It can be just the heel. You can pick up the right foot, holding the pelvis steady. Now think segmentally. Don't lead with the head. Lead with the rib cage. Can you turn just the ribs? Maybe an inch to the right without the pelvis and the low back turning. Bring it back to center and then step it down. Pick up the left foot, either toes to the ground or pick it all the way up. Think about just the midsection of the spine, just the rib cage. Turning left, leaning the head back into the block. And then walking it forward. So this is really small. This is very intentional. We're thinking segmentally, so we're just turning the thoracic spine. We're trying to hold the lumbar spine, the lowest part of the spine still. And when you get to the front of your mat, take your time. You can put the block aside and then pause here. Reach the arms forward and up. Get those shoulder blades way up. Hinge like that broom is taped behind your back. We start in quadruped. Let's do that spinal or wavy cat-cow, however it feels good for you. So maybe we're just thinking we move the head and neck first, then the upper back, then the lower back. Maybe you're really getting more into I'm moving this vertebra and then this vertebra. into this rounding and arching, so that's spinal flexion and extension. From your quadruped, step your right foot forward. Left knee can slide in a little bit for an active 90-90. We're either going to have hands behind the skull or keep the block like we've been doing behind the skull. Elbows in or out as much as you need, but we're really going to be mindful that the ribs are over the pelvis right now and that left glute is firm. We hold the pelvis still and think about just the rib cage. Lifting up, thoracic extension, come back to neutral, bring the elbows in. We round just the upper back like we're just tipping the rib cage forward toward the pelvis, and we lift back up. Lift the heart without changing the pelvis. Come back to neutral. Round the upper back. And then come back up. So as we do this, keep going. We are thinking segmentally. We're thinking about not letting the low back, the lowest section move. And we're just trying to move within that mid and upper back. Getting into that thoracic spine mobility without the pelvis tipping forward and back, which we will do later. Let's come back to quadruped, put the block aside. We'll step the right foot out to the right for an inner thigh stretch or an adductor stretch. With that feeling of a broom behind us, let's just take a couple rocks here, getting into that right inner thigh. But pay attention to the feeling of the low back, that lumbar spine. Does it feel like the belly is pulling you down and you're getting shortened here or pulled here? Get a little longer there by feeling the pubic bone zipper up toward the belly button. Now stay with your shoulders over your wrist or come to fist to get off the wrist. We're going to bring right hand behind the skull and just like it's a block, lift your skull up into the hand. We turn the ribs and just the ribs to the right. It's going to be really small. And then bring the chest back down, back to our starting position. So we turn just the ribs to the right, maybe an inch, and then bring it back. Imagine trying to balance something on your lower back. So that's how we're thinking segmentally here. We're turning the ribs again, that's the thoracic spine, but we're holding the lumbar spine, the low back still. Come back to quadruped. Let's do a little lateral flexion, so that's side bending, and we're going to do this segmentally. Think about a tail coming out of your tailbone and just wag that tail side to side. So we're starting to laterally flex the lumbar spine. And then let's pause. Same thing, we're going to side bend kind of the mid and upper back. So think about kind of trying to look toward your right hand or your right hip, and then back to center. Try to look toward that left hip or left foot by arcing the ribs over toward the pelvis. So we're side bending in the midsection, arcing side to side. Now hold that still, and we bring the right ear toward the right shoulder, side bending the cervical spine, the neck. Bring it back, long neck, and then left ear to the shoulder. So a couple of times, we'll segmentally side bend. Find your neutral position, and we'll do it on the other side. Left foot steps forward, right knee can slide in a little bit for our active 90-90. Either hands or block behind the skull. Now we want to think, rib cage over pelvis. No tipping forward and back here. Hold really still so the right glute is firm. We lift the heart without arching the back. And then lift back up, bring the elbows in any amount. Round just your upper back, but keep zippering the pubic bone up toward the belly button. Lift it back up. Lifting the chest, that's thoracic extension. And then rounding forward, that's a little thoracic flexion. We're trying to do this without any change in the lumbar spine, the lower back. So really draw those pelvic points in. Let's come back to quadruped. And from there, we'll step the left foot out to the left for that inner thigh stretch. Maybe we're even on fingertips or fists here as we take a couple rocks forward and back, as if that broom were behind our back. Notice what's happening around that low back. If it feels uncomfortable at all, notice what's happening around the pelvis. Can we find a more neutral or supported position? Now stay with the shoulders over your wrist or your fist, left hand behind the back of the skull. Lift the skull up into the hand. We turn just the rib cage, maybe an inch to the left. It could be so small. And then we bring it back. So try not to change what's happening at the pelvis or the low back, and just turn the ribs. Isolating the thoracic spine. Bring it back to quadruped. End up wherever you'd like. You can, of course, mobilize the spine in cat-cow or something there. You can give the wrists a break. Come to a child's pose, maybe a puppy pose on your forearms, or come to a down dog.